everyone. I've had a few questions this week about the cover letter, or as the portfolio instructions talks about, the reflective essay. Reflective essay, cover letter being two names for the same kind of assignment, which is something you have to write for the portfolio. And you'll remember that the reflective essay, or the cover letter as I've talked about it in the homework and in class, is a piece of writing that has really two purposes. It introduces the pieces that you are including in your portfolio, but it also reflects on them. And so that's why the instruction sheet for the portfolio calls it a reflective essay. The people reading your portfolio and I will read the reflective essay to get some insight on what you've learned about writing and doing the two assignments. So now that I've kind of reminded you about the purpose for writing the reflective essay, or the cover letter as I like to call it, I want to remind you about where some materials are inside D2L so that you can be working on your draft of the cover letter this week. So if you go to content, and I'm going to go there now, you'll notice that I've added at the very, very bottom of the content page, this course portfolio page. And when I click on it, you'll see some materials that you'll see on the course portfolio page on content. And the instructions for the portfolio as given to you by the English department are here. And then below here you see two links to example cover letters. So I'm only going to look at the link for cover letter number 2. I'll quickly tell you that cover letter number 1, I did show it to you in class. It's an example of a reflective essay or a cover letter that's in a business letter format. It has the same content in the introduction, body paragraphs, and conclusion as all the other examples. So remember I said it's sort of your choice which format you want to use for the reflective essay. You're not going to fail your portfolio because you choose to write this reflective essay in a business letter format. So if you prefer the example there, an example cover letter number 1, feel free to read it and look at it and look at the formatting. But I am going to show you only the website example cover letter number 2. And this is the website. When you click on the link, you come to this yellow website, this very nicely done blog. And this is a blog that's maintained by an English professor like me. And you see that the English professor is talking about what a cover letter or reflective essay for a portfolio is. So you can read through the instructions. I kind of just gave you a few sentences at the beginning of this video to remind you what the purpose of writing it is. You can ignore the length guidelines here. You don't really have a length requirement. Instead, I'll remind you that your cover letter should definitely have an introduction. It should have a body. And the body will probably consist of a paragraph per essay. You remember you're putting in your argument in the choice essay. You could expand those 2 paragraphs to 4 paragraphs, 2 paragraphs on each piece of writing, but I think at minimum having 2 nice sized paragraphs would be good. And then a conclusion. So I'm going to remind you that we looked at Amanda's in class, and I have these already open, so I might have to just figure out which tab I'm on. Let's see. Oh, I didn't open Amanda's, so let me do that real quick. Just to remind you that we looked at this one in class. We read the introduction. We read the body paragraph. You'll remember that I was really impressed by her thesis about taking the readers behind the scene. Remind you that you need to have an opening to your letter, to your reflective essay, to address the people who are reading it. Dear portfolio committee, dear portfolio readers, dear English professors, whatever you want to say. But a really nice introduction paragraph here, a nice thesis, and then recall that we looked at just her first body paragraph in class. You, of course, can read through her second body paragraph here. She has a 3rd essay in her portfolio, so there's a 3rd body paragraph, and then there's a conclusion and a closing. Okay, so this one was really nice in terms of she did a good job of reflecting on how the writing process worked for her. She talked about her strengths and weaknesses of each piece, so it was a really nice cover letter. Here's another example. Let's see if I'm going to the right one. Let's go see Rachel's. Oh, I'm on the wrong tab. Let me go to Rachel's. Here's Rachel's. She, again, has 3 body paragraphs because she has 3 essays she's required to have in the portfolio. You're only required to have 2. So you notice, again, that each body paragraph is focusing on the essays that are being included in the portfolio. They tell a little bit about them. And then I think the thing to point out about, this is Rachel's, is that her thesis is up here. She says, I didn't realize how much I had yet to learn. So as she goes through each piece that she's including in the portfolio, she's talking about what she learned about writing through each of the pieces. So that's another approach you could take. Instead of focusing on the strengths and weaknesses and the writing process that you used, you can sort of talk about what you learned in the choice essay, and then what you learned in the argument essay, because these were at different times in the semester and you were learning different kinds of writing skills. And quite frankly, if you think about it, each time we did a new assignment, we were building on and adding in new skills that you had to use and show me that you could use and use effectively. So this is a nice way to organize your essay as well, to always be reflecting on, earlier piece of writing, the choice essay, versus the argument, which was the last piece and shows the most different kinds of skills that you had to use, and then sort of making a comparison between the two to show how your writing changed or improved over time. So that's a different one. And of course, I'm not going to read through these because you guys can study them as you're working on your cover letters, but I'm just kind of giving you an overview of what the writers have done. And then the last one that you can get to from the link on that yellow website, the initial website that I showed you, is an interesting example in terms of the writer's use of narrative. She uses narrative to tell the story of her experience in the class and through the essays she wrote. And the reason this one stands out to me is that she doesn't really have a super clear thesis in here in the introduction, but she establishes that she's a 40-something-year-old single mom. You see that in the first line. And then she starts telling the story of what it's meant to her to come back to school and how she's been learning through writing. So you see this line here about that she's learned about grief through her writing. And so then she continues to talk about like the whole process of her writing at college, like taking the placement test, and then she goes through the essays as she was assigned them in the class, and what she's learning through writing as she's doing it. And quite frankly, the lessons she's learning about writing aren't necessarily about writing. Some of her lessons are about her life and learning about herself. So I want to point out again that this one's different in that she's using narrative to tell the story of what she learns about herself through writing. But at the same time, she's still reminding us of the contents of her portfolio, the essays that are in the portfolio. So that's a quick overview of the cover letter, just to remind you again of its purpose. And then you see like 3 very different approaches, but if you think about it, each writer and the different approaches we've looked at through this video, they are still introducing what's in the portfolio that the readers of the portfolio will encounter, and they are still in some way reflecting. So that's why on the instruction sheet for the portfolio, it's called the reflective essay, because the readers are expecting you to give them some insight on what it meant to you to write these essays. And learning can be broader than just, hey, I learned how to summarize, or I learned how to correct comma splices or whatever. You can reflect in a more personal way if the writing, the very act of writing made you learn something different than just writing skills, which of course is the point of the class, but we're always super excited when you guys can extend what you're learning in a class to something more personal and meaningful to you in your life. All right, guys, if you have questions, feel free to email me, and I hope you have a great rest of your week.